The steel cuffs clamped around Colonel Adrian Pierce's wrists with a final, biting snap, tight enough to bruise, loud enough to silence the crowd. She stood in full U.S. Army uniform, flanked by two rural deputies who refused to believe she was who her ID said she was. And just before they dragged her toward the cruiser, she calmly spoke 6 words into her smartwatch that made the Pentagon come running. The sun was just starting to rise, casting long streaks of gold across the 2-lane stretch of Route 231 as Colonel Adrian Pierce eased her black Chevy Tahoe into the gravel lot of a fuel-and-go gas station. The air was thick with Virginia humidity, the kind that clings to your skin before you've even shut the car door. She had just wrapped a high-security debriefing at a classified D.C. site, 8 straight hours in a cold bunker reviewing cyber attack simulations, threat matrices, and real-time responses. Her mind was sharp, but her body was tired, the kind of tired that comes from 3 decades of service, the kind that doesn't show on the outside but settles deep in the bones. Her uniform was crisp, her boots polished to a quiet mirror sheen. The embroidered nameplate, Pierce, caught the rising light as she stepped out, rolling her shoulders against the stiffness that always came after a long mission. She walked across the lot, her stride purposeful but unhurried. Inside the gas station, it was almost empty, just a skinny teenager slouched behind the counter in a faded hunt. Fish. Repeat, hoodie, and an older man hunched over a rack of scratch-offs near the energy drinks cooler. Adrian nodded politely at the cashier, grabbed a bottle of smart water and a protein bar, and headed for the counter. The teen didn't say a word. He didn't ring her up immediately either. His eyes dropped to the flag patch on her shoulder, then up to her dark skin, then down to the badge clipped to her vest. He tilted his head like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't like the answer to. "You military or something?" he asked slowly, suspicion already baked into the tone. "I am," Adrian said plainly, placing the items on the counter. He hesitated, then tapped at the register. She handed him cash, small bills, exact change, and offered a polite thank you. He didn't answer. As she walked back outside, she felt it, that strange, silent shift in atmosphere. The kind that doesn't come with words, just a quiet thickening of tension you can almost taste. She ignored it. Outside, she leaned against her Tahoe, opened her water, and dialed her driver to give an update. Her voice was low and measured, still in view of the storefront. Nothing about her movements was erratic, nothing out of place. She checked her watch, glanced down the road where her driver was due to meet her in 40 minutes, then took another sip of water. That's when she noticed the cruisers. 2 sheriff's vehicles pulled in fast, no sirens, just the gravel crackling under their tires. One boxed her Tahoe in from behind. The other swung in wide near Pump 4. Doors opened. Boots hit pavement. No one said anything right away, but Adrian could read their posture. Hands hovering over weapons. Eyes sharp. Not confusion, conviction. As if they'd already decided what they were walking into. A tall white deputy with a sunburned neck and mirrored shades approached. "Ma'am," he barked, "I'm going to need you to put the phone down and keep your hands where I can see them." Adrian blinked once, lowered the phone calmly onto the hood of her Tahoe. Colonel Adrian Pierce. U.S. Army Cyber Command. I just. Hands where I can see them. Now. The second deputy, younger, heavier, with ruddy cheeks and jittery hands, circled behind her, closer than necessary. Her spine straightened, but her expression didn't change. "I bought water," she said. "Made a call. I've been here less than 10 minutes. You have ID," the younger one snapped, already unclipping his cuffs. "Yes, I." Before she could finish, he yanked her left arm behind her. The cuffs clicked tight. Too tight. Her wrist bone pressed hard against the metal. She didn't resist. Didn't flinch. Just exhaled through her nose and said nothing. "You're not above the law," the tall one sneered. "Just because you play dress up in camo doesn't mean you get a free pass." That's when she knew. This wasn't about protocol. This was about power. The older man from inside was now watching through the glass. A woman at Pump 6 had paused mid-fill, phone in hand, staring. A teenager on a bicycle had stopped at the edge of the lot, camera pointed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. But the silence? It was loud. The deputies didn't care. Her rank meant nothing. Her posture, her years of service, none of it mattered. The younger one shoved her forward. "Where's your ID?" "In the side pocket of my bag," she said, clearly marked. "Always got an excuse," he muttered, yanking open the Tahoe's rear door. He rifled through her belongings like they were stolen goods. She kept her eyes forward. The sweat on her back wasn't from the heat, it was from staying still, from not letting her training slip under the pressure of humiliation. Because she knew what could happen when a black woman in uniform got labeled noncompliant. "You gonna tell me why you're wearing all this?" the tall one asked, waving a hand at her uniform. "Trying to scare people?" She looked him straight in the face. "I've served this country for 32 years. "Yeah," he laughed. "And I'm the King of England." The teenager on the bike moved closer, recording steadily. The woman in scrubs hadn't moved. The laborers by the ice machine had stopped talking altogether. Adrian could feel the moment freezing around her. She closed her eyes, breathed in through her nose. The cuffs bit tighter. She'd trained for hostile interrogations. She'd been embedded in cyber units overseas. But this was worse. Because this wasn't foreign soil. This was home. "I need to speak with my Pentagon liaison," she said evenly. "Your what?" the younger one mocked. "My Pentagon liaison. I have direct clearance." The taller deputy snorted. "Lady, we've heard every trick in the book." "You should check the badge number on my ID," she replied. "And you should make that call before this becomes bigger than you can handle." "Is that a threat?" He stepped closer. "It's a suggestion." Behind them, the gas pumps hissed quietly. Somewhere in the distance, a bird chirped. But no one moved. No one spoke. Only red recording dots blinking steadily from phones now raised and aimed. Then she did it. She tilted her wrist just enough to activate her smartwatch. The screen lit up. She tapped a rapid-fire sequence, memorized, rehearsed, classified. Her voice was calm but clipped. "Echo 7 Alpha. Initiate Pentagon Connect." The deputies froze. A second later, the voice from her watch came through, crisp, robotic. "Connecting secure line. Please wait." The taller one blinked. "What the hell are you doing?" "Making a phone call." A beat. Then. "Colonel Pierce, this is Lieutenant Colonel Devin Langston. Are you safe to speak?" "No," Adrian answered. "Unlawfully detained. 2 rural deputies. Immediate assistance required." "Copy that. Response team inbound." The watch fell silent. She didn't gloat. Didn't move. Just stood there, cuffed, silent, waiting. Because she knew every second from now on belonged to her. The silence that followed the last word from her smartwatch was heavy, thick with disbelief and dawning dread. Colonel Adrian Pierce remained perfectly still, her wrists still bound tightly behind her back, her eyes locked on the taller deputy who now looked like a man caught between instinct and consequence. His partner, the younger, stockier one, shifted uncomfortably, glancing around at the growing audience outside the fuel and go, phones still raised, red record lights still blinking like quiet alarms. They hadn't said a word since the call connected. Not one command, not one insult. Just stood there, hands twitching, minds racing. Adrian didn't flinch. She knew what came next. Protocols had already been triggered. Her location logged. Chain of command alerted. The wheels of federal accountability, so slow for some, had just started turning with purpose for her. 5 minutes passed. Then 6. The only sound came from the far end of the lot, an idling semi, a bird somewhere overhead. And then, at the edge of the road, an unmarked gray sedan slid into the gravel like a whisper. No lights. No sirens. Just control. The driver's door opened. Out stepped a man in a navy sport coat over slacks, ID badge clipped at his belt, his face unreadable. Lieutenant Colonel Devin Langston. Younger than Adrian but no less sharp. He walked straight toward her without looking at the deputies, his voice cool but authoritative. "Colonel Pierce," he said, "are you injured?" "Not physically," Adrian replied. "But unlawfully detained." "As I stated." Langston turned to the deputies, who now looked like kids caught stealing from the principal's office. "Remove the cuffs," he ordered. The taller deputy didn't move. "We got a call," he mumbled, half defensive, half afraid. The clerk inside said, "Remove the cuffs." "Now," Langston repeated, steel in his tone. "You've already made this worse than it needed to be." The younger deputy stepped forward first, fumbling with the keys, trying to act like this wasn't unraveling. The metal snapped open. Adrian brought her arms forward slowly, rubbing at her wrist with deliberate grace. The red marks were already visible. "You have ID?" the tall one asked Langston, still clinging to some shredded sense of control. Langston turned to him like a man who'd run out of patience for theater. He pulled out a sleek leather case, opened it, and held it eye level. Inside was his Pentagon clearance, the kind that didn't come with explanations. "You're going to want to preserve every second of your body cam footage," he said. "And I'd strongly advise against deleting anything." Behind them, the murmurs had grown. The nurse from earlier had stepped closer. The teenager on the bike hadn't moved, still filming with steady hands. Even the laborers were inching forward. A silver F-150 pulled into the lot, its driver pausing when he saw the scene. And then, with the precision of a drill, 3 black SUVs rolled in, no sound but tires crunching gravel. Doors opened in unison. Federal agents in dark suits stepped out, not in a rush, but with purpose. One headed toward Langston, whispered something. Another entered the store. The clerk, barely older than the teenager outside, was already pale. Through the glass, he looked like he wanted to vanish. The agent who went inside returned quickly, nodding toward Langston. He admitted to calling it in. Said she looked intense. Military. Said she stared at him too long. Langston gave no reaction. Adrian didn't blink. That was his criteria for calling in a threat, she asked, quiet but firm. She looked serious? Yes, ma'am, the agent confirmed. He said intimidating, actually. Of course he did, she said. The tension wasn't just thick now, it was electric. One of the agents stepped forward, a woman with sharp eyes and a badge that read Office of Military Legal Affairs. "Which one of you initiated the arrest?" she asked. The deputies froze. The younger one swallowed hard, sweat glistening beneath his hairline. "We both responded." But the description, it matched, the ID was shown, Langston interrupted. Federal clearance. Rank displayed. Uniform authentic. You chose not to believe it. She got defensive, she answered your questions. She followed your commands. You escalated. The agents fanned out around the scene, marking positions, taking statements. Phones were still up. Still recording. One woman in scrubs asked, not to anyone in particular, "They cuffed a colonel?" Adrian stepped forward slightly, voice calm, audible to everyone present. 32 years in service. I've trained cadets, briefed presidents, led missions overseas. But today, in my own country, in full uniform, I became a threat because I bought water. The murmurs rose, sharper now. Langston turned to the deputies again. You're both relieved from field duty effective immediately. Your superiors will contact you regarding a formal investigation. Your actions today have violated multiple protocols and civil protections. The taller deputy opened his mouth, then closed it. The younger one looked like he was shrinking by the second. But nothing they said now would fix it. It was already out there. Already clipped, shared, and reshared. Already a symbol. One of the agents retrieved Adrienne's bag from the SUV, gently handed it back to her. She nodded her thanks. "Do you want to leave with us, Colonel?" Langston asked. "I'm fine to wait," she said. "I want them to see what happens next." She didn't want to be whisked away. Not before the men who cuffed her in front of strangers saw exactly what accountability looked like. The agent from Legal Affairs turned to one of the deputies again. "Why didn't you believe her ID?" "It looked fake," the tall one said quietly. "And she had this attitude. Professionalism is an attitude," she replied. "And intimidation isn't an excuse for profiling." Another agent returned from the store. "We've secured internal camera footage. Matches her account. She paid. She waited. She made a phone call by her car. That's it." The gas station manager, now red in the face, stepped outside. "I didn't know," he started. "You didn't need to know," Adrienne cut in. "You just needed to treat me like a human being." The man fell silent. Langston looked around at the gathered phones, the eyes of strangers now glued to every second. There are procedures. There are channels. But what happened here wasn't a failure of process, it was a failure of perception. Adrienne turned toward the crowd. They didn't see a colonel. They saw a problem. Then she looked back at the two deputies. And they made a decision. One they'll have to answer for. No one argued. Because there was nothing left to say. The truth was standing in front of them, with red marks around her wrists, boots dusty from the roadside, and a backbone that hadn't bent once. She didn't yell. She didn't flinch. And that, more than anything, was what made people start to really listen. A week had passed since the parking lot in Madison County turned into a flashpoint for a conversation America still struggled to have. Colonel Adrian Pierce hadn't spoken publicly since that morning, hadn't given interviews, hadn't released statements, hadn't even posted on social media. While the video of her arrest had circled the globe, clipped and reposted with hashtags ranging from #JusticeForAdrienne to #ColonelCuffed, she stayed silent, not out of fear, but because she knew that when she finally did speak, it had to mean something. It wasn't about damage control. It was about truth. The truth had already done what it always does when caught on camera, it cracked the surface. The footage of her standing stoic in uniform, wrists bound behind her back while two deputies dismissed her identity and rank, had been viewed more than 22 million times. It was played on cable news loops, dissected by legal experts, reposted by veterans, reblogged by activists. And yet, as Adrienne watched it in silence from her living room, what struck her wasn't the number of views. It was how many people kept asking the same question: why didn't she yell? That question echoed louder than the cuffs snapping around her wrists ever had. She didn't respond to it then, but she would now. On a mild Thursday evening in Alexandria, Virginia, she stood at the back of a modest community center. Folding chairs lined the floor in neat rows. There were no flags on stage, no military banners, no honor guards. Just a microphone, a mic stand, and a room filled with people, neighbors, reporters, students, veterans, parents with young kids. They weren't there for spectacle. They were there for her. She wore a navy blouse and gray slacks. No stars, no stripes, no medals. Just Adrienne. And that, she thought, would be enough. She stepped up to the mic without fanfare, adjusted it slightly, and let the silence settle before she spoke. "I didn't come here to relive what happened," she began. "You've seen the footage. You've read the headlines. You don't need me to replay it." Her voice was calm, level. The kind of calm that wasn't performative, but earned. "I came because something's been bothering me more than that morning in the parking lot." It's what people said afterward. A few in the front row leaned in. Others watched without blinking. People asked, why didn't she fight back? Or why didn't she yell? She paused. And my personal favorite. If that had been me, I wouldn't have stayed so calm. Her hands rested gently on the podium. She didn't raise her voice, but her words landed like weight being set down, one truth at a time. You think calm is a choice? You think when two deputies roll up with hands near holsters, and you're a black woman in full uniform, that's a moment rich with options? Her eyes scanned the room. Calm wasn't a choice. Calm was survival. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, low but affirming. I've been serving this country longer than some of you have been alive. I've operated under fire overseas, worked through cyber attacks that could cripple entire infrastructure grids. But none of that prepared me for the moment someone looked at my uniform and saw a threat instead of service. She let that hang in the air. There's this myth, she continued, that if you wear the uniform long enough, if you collect enough stripes, earn enough stars, shake the right hands, you somehow transcend bias. That it won't touch you anymore. That your resume will protect you. But I'm here to tell you, it doesn't. It didn't. A young girl, maybe 11 or 12, sitting beside her mother in the third row, raised a small hand. Adrian looked at her, nodded gently. Does being in uniform make you feel safer? The girl asked softly. Adrian didn't answer right away. She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was lower, more personal. Only when the people looking at me believe it belongs to me. A long silence followed. Not awkward. Not empty. Just real. You want to know what the hardest part was? She asked the room. It wasn't the cuffs. It wasn't being searched. It wasn't the clerk who called, or the crowd that stayed silent, or even the deputies who mocked me. It was knowing that if I had raised my voice, just once, if I had flinched wrong, stepped too fast, looked too sharp, I wouldn't be here right now. That's what kept me still. Not pride. Not dignity. Instinct. She backed slightly away from the mic, just a pace, but the air around her stayed full. If you're still asking why I stayed calm, then you're asking the wrong question, she said. The real question is, why did calm have to be my shield? Someone near the back of the room whispered, Amen. Adrian continued. I've served 2 presidents, led joint force task teams, and reviewed national defense strategy behind closed doors. But none of that mattered in a gas station parking lot 20 minutes from my home. Because when perception outweighs reality, a badge doesn't shield you. A resume doesn't save you. And rank, in the wrong eyes, turns into threat. Another beat of silence. I'm not here to ask for an apology. I'm not here to call for firings. I'm here to ask for honesty. The system doesn't treat everyone equally. And until we say that out loud, nothing's going to change. She looked directly into the lens of one of the phones recording from the front row. So if you're watching this at home, and you're thinking, that couldn't happen to me, I hope you're right. I really do. But if you're thinking, that shouldn't happen to anyone, then we're on the same side. She nodded once, her final words steady and unshakable. If justice wouldn't have protected you in my place, maybe it's time we stop pretending it protects us all the same. She stepped back from the mic. No applause followed, not because they didn't want to, but because they couldn't yet. The weight of her words still pressed on their chests. It wasn't silence. From indifference. It was silence because something real had just happened in that room. And everyone knew it. Outside the community hall, kids rode bikes down the sidewalk. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The world kept moving. But inside that room, something had shifted. Because Adrian Pierce's story wasn't just a story anymore. It was a mirror. And once you see a crack in the glass, you can't unsee it. As the author of this story, I want to take a moment to reflect not just on what happened to Colonel Adrian Pierce, but on what her experience teaches us all. This was never just about a gas station. It wasn't about a mistaken identity or a misunderstanding. It was about the assumptions that travel with us the moment we walk into a room, or in Adrian's case, step out of a car in uniform. It was about the heavy weight of perception. About how race, gender, and presence can too easily become threats in the eyes of others, no matter how many stripes are earned or how many years of honorable service are given. The lesson here is not only about injustice, it's about the cost of silence and the power of composure. Adrienne didn't lose control. She didn't yell. She didn't fight chaos with chaos. And that's not because she wasn't angry or humiliated or deeply shaken. It's because she knew what the consequences could be if she let even one moment of emotion break through. That's a reality too many people live with every single day, and it's not right. Her restraint wasn't weakness. It was strength sharpened by experience. And that's something we can all learn from. Not just to stay calm in the face of wrong, but to be wise, to be deliberate, and to know when the most powerful statement we can make is to simply stand our ground with dignity. To the listener, the reader, the one who may feel unseen or doubted because of how they look or where they come from, know this: you are not invisible. And you are not alone. Adrienne's story is a reminder that truth has a way of rising. That no matter how someone tries to twist your reality, facts still carry weight. And when you speak from a place of truth, especially when it's uncomfortable, it has the power to shift not just hearts, but systems. So stand tall. Carry yourself with purpose, even when the world doesn't recognize it. Because the story you live today might be the one that helps someone else find their voice tomorrow. On behalf of our channel, U.S. Instructive Stories, I want to thank you deeply for listening, for thinking, and for reflecting with us. These aren't just stories, they're mirrors. And your attention is what turns reflection into action. Until next time, stay aware, stay strong, and stay ready to speak the truth, even if your voice shakes. Thank you.